Welcome to Working Man Investor. On this channel, I discuss the economic environment and the steps people can take to protect themselves and their family's financial future. Today's episode is going to be on tariffs. We've seen a lot about tariffs in the news lately, and I've seen a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of confusion out there. I thought I'd make this video to try to clear some things up. First, what is a tariff? It's a tax put on by a country for goods and services that are imported to the domestic country from another country. So in this case, we've got a 10% tariff on China as of the making of this video, and it's a blanket tariff, meaning on everything made in China. It's not just on specific things. So the United States basically is charging a 10% tax for everything that gets imported into the United States to be sold to the American public. One of the biggest things I want you to get out of this video here is to understand that who pays for these tariffs when they enter our ports and our railroads and our roads. It's not the Chinese government, like a lot of people think. The people who pay for this 10% tariff are the businesses, and in this case, domestic businesses. So why is this important? Roughly 70% of the inventory sold at Walmart comes from China. So either Walmart is buying this directly from a supplier and paying a 10% tariff, or there's a middleman there buying these products for the 10% tariff, and then they're turning around and selling it to Walmart so Walmart can sell it to us. The middleman is probably going to bump the prices up on Walmart. So either way, Walmart's having to pay for this tariff. So what do most companies do when their expenses go up and they have to remain profitable? They often pass those prices on in some form to the consumer. Maybe we won't have to cover the whole 10%, but any type of an increase is going to hurt us. In fact, back in November, Walmart CEO John David Rainey told CNBC that tariffs would likely lead to price hikes. Now, Walmart isn't alone here either. 40% of the merchandise sold in Target, roughly 40%, comes from China also. So when you think about this, where do the middle class and the poor predominantly shop? We predominantly shop in Walmart and Target. So we are the ones that can least afford a bump up in the price of the things that we buy. And what do we buy from these stores? We're usually buying everyday things that we need. It's not luxury items. So the middle class is still struggling right now. We saw this in the latest election. What was the reason Trump predominantly won? It was on the economy. That's what drove it. The pandemic happened back in 2019. All the governments shut down, cut off the supply line. So we quit producing things. China quit producing things. What did the United States do then? We gave everybody stimulus checks, helicopter money. So now you had all this money chasing these limited goods and services that were not being replenished. So as we were buying these goods and these services and they weren't being replenished, they were becoming less and less available. They were becoming more scarce because everybody had this free money. What happens in that situation? Prices go up. So that's really what kicked off the inflation about 5 years ago, and we're still recovering from that today. Inflation has slowed down. The average working person, our wages have not caught up yet. We're starting to get there. We're starting to see raises coming up, but our standard of living has dropped. So this is my concern with tariffs, is that we're going to raise prices on the very bare necessity of things that are coming from China. So why are we actually doing this? Why is the United States placing tariffs upon China? Well, the hope is that we can start producing it here, produce some manufacturing jobs, which we haven't really had for really since the 80s. 60s, 70s were our heyday. The 80s, we were importing more than we were exporting. We started to build up the deficit. That's when our manufacturing jobs went away. The goal of tariffs is to try to bring manufacturing back to the United States. So the problem with that is, and a lot of people don't think about this, is the standard of living in the United States is much higher than China. So with that, the Chinese people can sell their labor cheaper than the American worker can. So a Chinese worker can go into a factory and work for, say, $7, $8 an hour. And they can do that and live comfortably. American worker can't do that. So if we bring manufacturing back, multitude of issues with that. One being our standard of living is higher, as I've said, so we're going to demand a higher salary than the Chinese worker would. What happens when you can't produce something cheaply? You have to sell it at a higher cost because the business has to be profitable. Other issues are the Chinese people don't have things like a 401k. They have a type of medical coverage through their whole government, which the United States doesn't have. So insurance for companies are all added expenses here that they don't have in China. So due to this, we're not going to be able to sell the products as cheaply. So either way, whether through tariffs or whether for reshoring jobs, the consumer loses. The consumer is going to have to pay more for these products. So the next thing then is, do tariffs protect jobs, which is another claim. There's mixed data on that. The best thing I can do for that is I'm going to read you some of the stuff I researched. The effect on tariffs on jobs is highly debated. The tariffs Trump introduced on the steel and aluminum industry during his first terms, those were very politically popular. It had bi-party support, meaning Democrats and Republicans both supported it. It did promote a few of the shuttered steel mills within this country to reopen, and it created with it several thousand jobs in the metal industry. But it also had some negative effects. Countries, as we've already seen, China has retaliated to this 10% tariffs. They did the same thing for this. They slapped tariffs on us for our agriculture. That was hit hard by the tariffs in China. For example, our soybean exports towards the end of 2018 dropped by 63%, while overall exports fell by 20%. This is according to the Congressional Research Service. So with this, the agriculture area of our economy lost jobs. When you lose 63% of your export business in soybeans and 20% overall, you have no choice but to lay people off because you're not producing as much and bringing in as much income as you were before. Furthermore, when the tariffs were imposed on the materials like the steel and aluminum industries, other manufacturing sectors faced higher costs, which can negatively affect employment. So take a company like John Deere. John Deere buys plate steel from our steel mills within this country. Plate steel is just that. It's a big plate of steel. And they have them delivered to their warehouses where they manufacture and they make tractors out of. Because we were tariffing steel from coming in from China, it jacked the price up. There's not enough competition here and not enough options for John Deere. So they basically had to pay whatever price the American companies were charging. And remember, all of our American employees in the steel mills are making a lot more than the Chinese employee would. Therefore, the steel is more expensive. This, in turn, forced them to raise the price of their tractors once they made them. This was going on as you're having the agriculture area struggle with 63% of their soybean exports getting hit. Therefore, they were buying less tractors. What happens when this happens? Well, John Deere begins to have to lay off. They start shutting down. Instead of running maybe 3 turns, they run 1 turn. The employees that were getting overtime now get their overtime cut. Salary positions get cut. That's just what happens. So the jobs that were saved from tariffs often come with a high cost. The Peterson Institute of International Economics found that every job in the steel industry saved in 2018 and 2019 by tariffs cost the American consumers and American business $900,000. Again, this goes back to we cannot produce things cheaply in this country compared to other countries. This is because our standard of living is so high. I know if you're struggling, it doesn't seem that way, but your standard of living compared to some of these third world countries is huge. You cannot sell your labor for $2-3 an hour like a lot of other countries can and live comfortably off $2-3 an hour. You starve to death in this country on this. You have to get, 15, 20? 21 more, you're going to want some kind of health insurance. The company's going to have to provide you with some type of health insurance to employ you. Otherwise, they employ you, they get you trained, but the whole time you're looking for another job because you don't have health insurance. And what if you get sick or hurt, or your wife or your husband or your kids? So the company's going to have that extra added expense of insurance. You're probably going to want some type of a 401k or something like that, and the company's going to probably want to match. Now, that may not be a deal breaker for you, but companies compete with other companies for good employees, and one of the ways they do that is through benefits. So if a company isn't offering a matching 401k, you're likely to go to another company that pays a similar amount, has similar health insurance, but has a matching 401k, and so that perk pulls you over there. Or vacation time. There's all kinds of benefits out there that China doesn't necessarily have to deal with that the United States employer does. Now, I'm not making the case for or against tariffs here. I'm just trying to lay out some facts. I want you to get from my channel, to start thinking different. I don't want you to be some of the people, and I know a lot of people like that say tariffs are coming from Trump. We're good. We're going to prosper again. We're going to start manufacturing again. There are economic forces in play within all of our economies that the government cannot regulate out. It cannot happen. The Cantillon effect, Triffin's dilemma, Gresham's law, all to name a few, which I will go into detail more on other videos, that governments cannot regulate out and that people don't know about because the mainstream media doesn't report it, and it wasn't taught in our textbooks in school. It's information you have to go out and search. This is what I mean by you need to learn to cut through the noise. You need to be able to hear, okay, a tariff is coming, all right? Are we going to start manufacturing more in the United States? Maybe. But what are the unattended consequences? Because Trump isn't putting these 10% tariffs in with the idea of screwing the little man. I've heard people say that. I don't believe that. I believe that he's doing it try to bring some jobs back to this country in manufacturing. Problem is the economic laws in place aren't going to allow that happen. I want you to be able to look and be like, all right, we have 10% tariffs on China. Everything coming from China is expensive. What does this mean? Let me do some research. Let me think. Let me not panic. One, we import more from Mexico than we do China now. A lot of people don't realize it. They just assume it's China. Two, what's going to happen at Walmart? What is sold at Walmart? All you got to do is Google this. What amount of product comes from China to Walmart? You can break it down if you want. If it's 70% of stuff, it's going to pretty much be a lot of what we use every day: deodorant, soap, shampoo. So then I want you to also think, what is China going to do about this? Well, one, they're going to retaliate with tariffs. What else are they going to do? Well, the Chinese government is not stupid. They've been preparing for this. They've heard the threats. A lot of what the Chinese have done is they've gone into Mexico and they've opened up companies that are run by Chinese, and they'll send their managers in there to manage, and they'll hire Mexicans to do this labor. The cost of living is so low, the Mexicans will sell their labor cheaply to where they can produce it at a level the United States can't compete with. Labor in Mexico is cheaper than Chinese now, the Chinese labor now, because the Chinese standards of living has raised so much over the past 20, 30 years due to manufacturing that they're starting to suffer a little bit from what the United States is, to where their standard of living has improved so much that they can't compete with Malaysia, Mexico, Vietnam. Those three countries are starting to turn. In the next 5-10 years, you're going to start to see them become the manufacturing hubs of the world. China knows this, so they're prepared for this. So let me get off my rant here and get back to tariffs. So say we jack up tariffs so high that it makes it impossible for any country at all to import into the United States. Not profitable. So Mexico can't do it. None of those countries can do it that I've mentioned, including China. However, are we going to be able to produce it here without making it more expensive? Well, I've gone over that. Not likely, because of our standard of living. Also, and this is key, understand this: the dollar is the reserve currency of the world. The only way for other countries to get their hands on the dollars and build up their reserve of dollars in order to do global transactions, 60% of transactions within the global economy are settled in dollars. The United States Treasury is the only entity in the world that has the ability to create dollars. They can just hit a button and create dollars. Other countries can only get dollars by exporting, selling their merchandise to us, which we pay in dollars, and they take their dollars and build up their reserves and use it in the global economy for other things. So what happens if we tariff everything so high and we cut off all these countries from the dollar? We're going to cause a potential liquidity crisis. It's supply and demand. What happens if we have all these transactions that need to be settled in dollars and we've reduced the amount of available dollars in the global economy? The dollar is going to get stronger because it's going to take more of foreign currencies to buy a dollar and less dollars to buy more of foreign currencies. So, when a country's currency gets stronger, it's better for importing than exporting. This is because the currency, in this case the dollar, can buy more of the goods for fewer dollars. Then we can take merchandise that we bought and resell it in Walmart to the American consumer cheaper. On the flip side, a strong dollar is terrible for exporting. Now, I want you to understand this too. This is something that we're talking about. You hear Trump say a lot about this. I want it to be built in America. I want it to be made in America. We have the ability to do it. We do, but we don't have the ability to do it affordably. So, the reason that a strong dollar is horrible for exporting is because other countries need more of their currency to purchase our goods and services. Furthermore, in the case of China, any of the products that we're going to produce and try to sell them, they're not already selling them, such as oil, natural gas, those they'll buy from us because they have to have it. They'll pay market price, but t-shirts, sweatshirts, anything that's sold in Walmart, they're not going to buy it from us because they can produce it there more cheaply. And even if they were to buy it from us in a form of good faith, what are they going to do with it? Or are their retail stores going to put out these t-shirts at, I don't know, 5 times more than what the t-shirts made in China cost? And is the Chinese government going to force their people to then buy it? Or are the people going to buy it out of good faith for the United States? No. These are the underlying economic forces. So, I want to conclude this video, because I'm pushing 20 minutes. I want to conclude this video with just going over some of the basic things I want you to understand. And that is that the governments are not paying for the tariffs. The domestic manufacturer is. Also, I want you to understand that tariffs have unintended consequences. In this case, if we set a tariff too high, we're likely going to force businesses to pass at least some of the costs on to us as the consumers, and this is going to start to raise prices again. It could be inflationary at a time before our wages for the middle class and the poor have had a chance to even catch up from our last bout of inflation from the pandemic. And I also want you to start to comprehend supply and demand here. If we tariff to the point where other countries cannot export to us and get a hold of our dollars, we're going to increase the demand for our dollars even more, and we're going to limit the amount available. That this is going to greatly increase the demand for dollars. This increase in the demand, along with a reduction in supply, will strengthen the dollar, causing a potential liquidity crisis within the global economy, which will affect everybody because we are a global economy now. All of our economies are intertwined. All these countries are intertwined with the United States, whether they like it or not, or whether or not we like it. They produce stuff cheaper than we buy it with our dollars. They need our dollars because our dollars are the reserve currency of the world, and 60% of transactions within the global economy are settled in dollars. This is going to make bringing manufacturing very difficult, and I don't believe we can until we all fall into poverty, which would happen if we lost the reserve currency status of the world. Whole nother video about the Cantillon effect, which I really need to make because I keep talking about it in all of my videos, and I've yet to make a video on the Cantillon effect, and I'm going to correct that over the next few days and get one out there for you guys. So I know I've thrown in a lot at you here. If you're confused, don't be concerned. I was very confused too when I first started on my financial education, and I've been able to understand it, and trust me, I am not smarter than any of you, and most of you are probably a lot smarter than me. If you want to learn more about tariffs, I suggest watching my other videos on here. I have one titled Triffin's Dilemma, which is one of the economic forces I briefly discussed here. I go into it in much more detail. Here we'll discuss Triffin's Dilemma in multitude videos over the time of this YouTube channel. I also have another video out there on Trump's tariffs will create thousands of jobs in Mexico. Now that is not a shot at Trump. That's actually a title off of an article that I go over that I got from CNBC. I am neither pro or against Trump. I am neither Democrat nor am I Republican. I do not want this channel to be labeled as anything political. I live life in facts because that's what economics is, the study of facts. You have to come into this with an objective mind, and you have to build some confidence in yourself if you want to ever get ahead financially, and that can only be done through financial education. So lastly, I just want to say, if you're in a dark place financially, you're not alone. 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. I want you to understand it's possible to break free of living from paycheck to paycheck. However, there's no silver bullet for it. There's nothing I can say or do that can get you there, or anybody else, no matter who else's channel you go to. So the only way to do it is 3 steps. Gain financial education, work extremely hard, and be very disciplined with your money. That's it. And through discipline, you have to make sacrifices, which I'm going to do a whole nother video on for that too. Working man investor here. Keep moving forward, people. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Good luck to you.